Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our program. Today, we are discussing a question that many communities are thinking about. Should schools start later in the morning? This topic is important because it affects students, families, and school staff. We want to understand the different sides of this discussion. We have two guests with us today. Sarah Chen is a parent, and she supports later school start times through her work with Sleep for Students. And David Miller is a high school teacher and sports coach. He has some concerns about making this change. Sarah will first share her reasons for wanting later start times. Then, David will explain his points. After that, we will have a discussion. Finally, they will both give their closing thoughts.
Thank you, Alex. I believe that starting school later in the morning is very important for our teenagers. It can help their physical health, their mental well-being, and how well they do in school. First, we need to understand that teenagers' bodies are different. Their natural body clocks, or circadian rhythms, make them want to sleep later and wake up later. It's not just that they are lazy, it's how their bodies work during these years. When they have to wake up very early for school, many of them don't get enough sleep. This can make it hard for them to grow and develop properly. Second, when teenagers get enough sleep, there are many benefits. They can concentrate better in class, which means they can learn more easily. Their memory also improves. Enough sleep also helps their mood. They are often happier, less stressed, and less likely to feel sad or anxious. Good sleep also supports a strong immune system, so they might get sick less often. Third, many experts agree with this idea. Doctors who specialize in children and sleep, as well as organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics, recommend that middle and high schools should start at 8:30 a.m. or later. They say this because research shows that when schools start later, students get more sleep. This leads to better grades, fewer car accidents involving tired teen drivers, and overall better health. So by changing school start times, we can create a school environment that is healthier and helps students learn better. It's about matching school schedules with students' natural needs.
Thank you, Alex. I agree that teenagers need enough sleep, and that is very important. However, changing school start times to be much later has many practical problems. These problems can affect not just the students, but also their families, the school staff, and the whole community. We need to think carefully about these issues. First, let's think about families. Many parents have work schedules that start early in the morning. If high school starts later, it could be very difficult for parents to get to work on time. Some families also have younger children who go to primary schools that might start earlier. A later high school start could create problems for arranging childcare for these younger siblings. Second, later school days mean that school finishes later in the afternoon. This will affect after-school activities. Many students participate in sports, school clubs, or have part-time jobs. If school ends later, there will be less time for these activities, especially in the winter when it gets dark early. This could mean students have to choose between their activities or that some activities might be canceled. Sports teams, for example, need daylight for practice and games. This would be a big challenge. Third, I am not sure that starting school later will automatically mean teenagers get more sleep. Some teenagers might just stay up even later if they know they can wake up later. I think it's also important for teenagers to learn how to manage their time and develop good sleep habits, no matter when school starts. This is an important life skill. So while I understand the points about sleep, we need to look at the bigger picture. We must consider how this change affects everyone and maybe explore other ways to help teenagers get the rest they need without causing so many problems.
Thank you both for your opening statements. Sarah, you talked about the biological needs of teenagers. David, you raised concerns about practical issues. David, how do you weigh those biological needs against the practical problems you mentioned?
That's a fair question, Alex. I do understand the science about teenage sleep patterns. It's clear that their bodies are wired differently during those years. However, the reality is that the adult world, including most jobs and family life, often operates on an earlier schedule. Schools are part of this larger system. To change school start times dramatically means asking schools and families to make very big adjustments. This can be a huge burden, especially for families with limited resources or flexibility. It involves reorganizing transport, parents changing work hours, and finding new childcare solutions. My question is, should schools be the only ones to adapt so much when it affects the whole community structure?
Sarah, David highlights significant disruptions for families and the community. How can these be realistically managed if schools were to start later?
David raises valid points about the challenges, but I believe the health and educational benefits for our students are so important that we, as a community, should try to find creative solutions. For example, some businesses might be able to offer more flexible work arrangements for parents. Communities could also invest in or expand before school or after school programs to help with childcare or provide safe places for students. We also need to remember the cost of not making a change. When students are sleep deprived, it affects their learning, their mental health, and even their physical safety. These are also very high cost for society. So it's about weighing the logistical challenges against the long-term benefits for our children's future.
Let's talk more about family routines and after-school activities. David, you're concerned about the impact here. Sarah, how do you address this specific concern that later school end times will reduce opportunities for students?
I understand the concern. However, some activities could be reorganized. For example, clubs could meet during a longer lunch break, or communities could invest more in lighted facilities for sports. A student who is well-rested might also engage more effectively in activities, even if time is slightly adjusted. The quality of their participation could improve. It might require new thinking, but student well-being should be a priority.
David, Sarah suggests ways to adapt. Do you see these as workable solutions across the board?
I appreciate Sarah's ideas, but I am skeptical about how practical they are for everyone. Reorganizing all after-school activities for a district is a massive task. Investing in lighted facilities is expensive. And what about coordinating with other schools that don't change their schedules for things like sports competitions? Many students also have part-time jobs. Less time after school means less time to work. Finding jobs that start later might be harder for teenagers. These solutions sound good, but implementing them fairly for all students and activities would be very difficult and costly.
This is clearly a complex issue. Are there any compromise solutions, for example, a slightly later start, or different schedules for different age groups? Or other ways to address teen sleep without changing start times so much?
A moderate adjustment, like 30 to 45 minutes later, could be a first step. This would allow everyone to adjust more slowly. However, research suggests that for high schoolers to truly benefit, a start time of 8:30 a.m. or later is better. Education on good sleep habits is important, but it's often not enough on its own because of teenagers' natural body clocks.
I agree that educating students and parents about healthy sleep habits is valuable. We can do more to promote this in schools. If we consider any changes to start times, even small ones, it needs careful planning and community input. Pilot programs could be a way to test the effects. I still have concerns about big changes, but I'm open to discussing smaller, well-planned adjustments. We should also look at other factors like homework load that affect teen sleep.
In closing, I want to emphasize that the health, well-being, and academic success of our teenagers are incredibly important. We cannot ignore the strong evidence showing that later school start times can help them. Starting school later aligns better with teenagers' natural sleep patterns. This leads to better concentration, improved learning, and supports their mental and physical health. I understand there are challenges in making this change. It requires adjustments from families and communities. However, I am confident that if we work together, we can find practical solutions. Imagine our students being more alert in class, feeling healthier, and being more prepared to learn and succeed. This is the positive future we can create by making school start times more sensible for teenagers. It's an investment in their future and in the future of our community.
To sum up, while everyone agrees that teenagers need good sleep, changing school start times to be significantly later causes major practical problems. These problems affect families, schools, and the wider community. My main concerns are the disruption to family life, especially for working parents, the negative impact on after-school activities like sports and jobs, and the risk that students might not actually get more sleep, but just shift their schedules later. I believe we should focus more on other solutions. This includes better education about sleep for students and parents, encouraging families to establish good routines, and teaching students about limiting screen time before bed. We need a balanced approach that considers the needs of everyone involved. Let's look at multiple ways to support student well-being, not just one change that could create many new difficulties. Careful consideration and a wider range of strategies are needed.
Thank you, Sarah Chen, and thank you, David Miller, for sharing your thoughts and arguments with us today. It has been a very interesting discussion. We've heard strong points on both sides. Sarah has emphasized the clear benefits for student well-being and academic performance if schools start later, based on teenagers' biological needs. David has highlighted the significant practical and logistical challenges that such a change would bring for families, school activities, and the community as a whole. It is clear that this is a complex issue with no easy answers, and there are valid points on both sides. We hope this discussion has given our listeners a lot to think about. We encourage you to continue this important conversation in your own communities. Thank you for tuning in.